So, you've been thinking about moving to the Lansing, Michigan area, and in your research, you've been seeing a place called Holt, Michigan. Well, in this video, I'm gonna talk to you about some of the pros, some of the cons, about living in Holt, Michigan, and also, please stay tuned until the end because I'm gonna share with you an aspect of the Holt schools that might surprise you. So I invite you again to be able to sit back, relax, because we're gonna get started with this next episode of Lansing, Michigan Life right now. Well, good morning or good evening or whatever time it might be, wherever you're watching from. I'm Troy Seifert. I'm with the Capital Area Real Estate Specialist in the greater Lansing, Michigan area. And we get phone calls all the time from people who are just like you watching this channel, who are looking to maybe buy or sell real estate in the Lansing, Michigan area. And if that's you, I would invite you to be able to call, text, email me, or there's a link to even be able to schedule a Zoom call. I would love to be able to speak with you just about what your future real estate goals are. And also, if you haven't already, if this is your first time to the channel, or maybe this is your 10th time to the channel, I invite you to like, subscribe, or ring the bell for any notifications so that you can be the first to be notified whenever we have a new episode of Lansing, Michigan Life go live on the web. And we've been doing that about once or twice a week. So you will get those notifications weekly from us. And I feel there's been a lot of useful information. I've heard from some of you out there. I greatly appreciate it. People who are looking to move to the Lansing, Michigan area sometime in the spring. So it's never too early to be able to reach out to me, whether that's 9 days, 90 days, 9 months from now. We will be able to help you out no matter what your timeline is. All right, so let's get started with our next topic, which are the pros and cons of living in Holt, Michigan. Now, maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't, but I do have a video about the top 5 suburbs in Lansing, Michigan. And in that video, I mentioned, I think I've already talked about Okemos. I've talked about DeWitt. I've talked about East Lansing. I've talked about Grand Ledge. I've talked about 4 of the 5. This is my 5th one, Holt. So I had to kind of round out all my top 5 suburbs. This one was the one that was 5th. It might surprise some people about Holt, just because there are some areas more on the eastern side of Lansing that might be more appealing to people as far as price points go. Just as far as school systems might go over there. Well, there was a reason why I chose Holt, and I do invite you to kind of look at that video just to see the reason why. But Holt is a great area on the southern side of Lansing. I do feel like it is just overshadowed by some of the other suburbs in Lansing. But as you can see in the pros and cons here, as I'm going to be reading these, you'll be able to see why I did rate it in my top 5. So let me go ahead, get started with the pros. As I always do in my pros and cons videos, I always start with the pros, then I get to the negative, okay? So let's get started with the first pro. And the first pro that I have here, as far as the suburbs go in Lansing, Holt has the lowest average purchase price among many of the suburbs in Lansing, Michigan. So in 2024, granted, years from now, this could look extremely cheap, years from now, if this is still, out there on YouTube. But in 2024, the average purchase price for a home in Holt was $275,000. So if you've been looking in some of my other videos, I've been talking about some of the other suburbs like Okemos, the average price point is around $400,000. DeWitt, the average price point is around $400,000. Grand Ledge, I believe, was around $325,000. So the fact that the average price point is $275,000, and in just in Lansing in general, like the entire area, that the average price point is $225,000, just goes to show you how affordable Holt is when you compare it to Okemos and even Grand Ledge and DeWitt. I mean, it's about $125,000 cheaper on average to be able to live in Holt. So also with new construction, the thing I would want to point out, in one of my videos I just did it was a tour of Holt. I went to a neighborhood called Meadow Ridge that is doing some new construction with Mayberry. Well, the starting price for new construction in that area in Meadow Ridge is $350,000. And I feel like for around a maybe 1,800 square foot home, that is pretty reasonable for what I've been seeing new home builds go for. So if you're even thinking about new construction, it's starting at $350,000 with Mayberry. There are some other builders, I think CVE builders, that might be a little bit less than that, but smaller homes and not as quality of materials as maybe Mayberry might have. And that there's a neighborhood down the road that is CVE builders as well that might be a little bit cheaper. But just to kind of give you a heads up, that's like what new construction costs would look like, but pretty affordable overall. So my second pro in Holt, Michigan is significant growth in the last 20 years. So there's always a good sign about if you're in a town where there's been significant growth, that should be a place that will have good return for you, right? So in the year 2000, the city of Holt, just the city part, okay, that has an address of Holt, Michigan, it was at 11,315 people. In the year 2010, it was 23,973 people. That is a difference of 12,000 people over the course of 10 years. So what happened? Well, during the years 2000 to 2007, there was a huge housing boom of builders just building everywhere, right? So that was one significant part that happened there. And so Holt just went on a huge just building boom. And what ended up happening, I ended up moving here into Michigan in about 2007, I believe it was the year that I moved here to Michigan, which was towards the end of the housing crisis. And I remember looking at my first house and I saw Holt's on there. Like these homes were like $150,000. Like it was crazy. And they were newer home builds. So during the housing crisis, when the market collapsed, Holt had very reasonable home prices and they just built way too much. But a lot of people moved there because it was so affordable. So 2010, close to 24,000 people. 2020, the growth didn't stop there, but it wasn't as big as it was from 2000 to 2010. But 2020, it was 25,625 people. So Holt continues to build. I think I just told you that in one of the neighborhoods, they're continuing to build lots. There's another neighborhood where they're continuing to build. So Holt is an area where there's growth. That is extremely important when you're looking for a home in real estate to be in an area where there has been some significant growth. And I've looked at a lot of data, you guys, in all the suburbs. When I saw that data from 2000 to 2010, I was like, whoa. I mean, like that's a significant amount of growth in one area. So the growth in the last 20 years, number 2 pro. The number 3 pro for living in Holt, Michigan is the size of the school system. The size of the school system. So Holt Schools has roughly about 5,000 people in the entire school system. It's one of the largest school systems in the greater Lansing area. Obviously, Lansing proper has the most in their school system, followed by Grand Ledge and Holt are neck and neck with the amount of students that are there. Then you got Okemos right underneath that, and then a lot of the other schools have about the same size school system. So why do I bring up the size of the school system? Well, what I found with the size of the school systems is that if you have a larger school system, there's more opportunity for you. There might be more funding for maybe special education. There could be more funding for English as a second language. There could be more funding for other clubs, activities. There could be more competition because you're up against larger schools. In Michigan, you're up against same-sized schools. You're not going to be going up against you're not going to have a school that's going to have 100 people go versus a school of 1,000 people. Like that's just not how it's going to go. So similar-sized schools are going to go up against each other, and so you're going to have a lot more growth even in athletics, music departments, all of that. There's a lot of opportunity for you if you're in a school system that's larger. There's just more money there. So I give that as a huge pro just because of the opportunity that could be there for Holt. Right, number 4, the number 4 pro for living in Holt, Michigan is the Veterans Memorial Gardens. Now this is a landmark. This is a place I went to on my vlog tour of Holt. And I find it as a major pro because it's one of the only places that honors the fallen veterans in our area. There are some memorials throughout Lansing area, like towards the Capitol. There's a monument that's there, but it doesn't list the people that have served and died in war. And this Veterans Memorial Garden, they have 5 branches of the military represented. It also is just a beautiful scenic park. During the winter season, you'll see in my vlog tour, they really do decorate for Christmas. During the summer season when it's nice out, there are concerts that are there. There's like a little amphitheater area where you can sit, and there's concerts that are there, and it's also a place that you can reflect as well. But I find it just a very unusual place in that, like, it's located in Holt, out of all places. You know, there must have been like a decent amount of funding for that, but they've really kept up with the place, and especially like in the spring, summer, where the flowers are blooming, they have a fountain going in those gardens. I mean, it really is a great place to have, and just a great way to be able to honor our veterans, those people who have died and served our country. So that's number 4. Okay, number 5 pro for living in Holt, Michigan is that it's convenient to many locations. It's located conveniently to highways. Like, you can take I-96 since it's on the south side of Lansing. It's very close to I-96. You're probably within a 5-minute drive for highway access. You do have access to a lot of restaurants on the south side of town. There's a movie multiplex. You do have a lot of options within a 5 to 10 minute distance. So it is convenient to there. Also, Holt has I don't want to call it a secret road because a lot of people know about it, but there's a road called College Road that runs north and south in Holt. And a lot of people who are especially working at Michigan State University, they will commute from Holt and just take College Road all the way up to East Lansing. It runs very, very close to that area, and it's just a very easy commute to get to Michigan State University. I've had some clients do that as well. So it does have some convenience to the eastern part of town, where East Lansing, where Okemos is as well, and just can have very convenient highway access to Interstate 127, which runs right towards the center of Lansing, north and south. So the convenience that it has to many locations is the reason why I gave it the number 5 pro for living there. Okay, so let's get to the cons. Maybe that's what a lot of you just want to hear. Why should I not live in Holt, Michigan? Okay, so Troy, why don't you have it rated higher? Like, why is it not the number 2 suburb? Why is it not number 1? You know, why is it not as good as Okemos and DeWitt and some of these other areas that you've highlighted? Okay, well, here are some of the cons. The first con is that in Holt, the taxes are higher. And I've said this a lot in some of my pros and cons, like in Okemos, the taxes are higher there, right? So I do this in all of my videos when I explain the taxes. I try to do it in a very simple math way, okay? So in Holt, it has a township in Holt called Delhi Township, and that makes up a majority of the Holt area. So Delhi Township, that millage for Holt schools is around 50 mils. So for 50 mils, what that means for you is that if you were to buy a $400,000 home and it were to be assessed at half that value, which is what an assessment typically is, it's half of what the value is of the house. So at $200,000, that's what the assessed and also the taxable value would be. For $200,000 taxable value, that would be roughly around $10,000 a year for your taxes. And I find for a $400,000 house, that's quite high. Not as high as Okemos, where it can be, you know, $11,000, $12,000. Their millage is a little bit higher. But the other thing with Holt is this, and this is the difference in the taxes, is that what I find whenever I have a listing in Holt, or whenever I have a closing in Holt, I find that there is some sort of drain assessment from the Ingham County Drain Commissioner. Delhi Township is just known for having a drain assessment. So what is a drain assessment? Good question. So that is when the drain commissioner makes an improvement on usually it's a county, so like Ingham County, like a county drain, to make an improvement. And what they will do is they will assess the area where that assessment occurred. So if you're in a neighborhood where they did a drain improvement, then they will assess all the people in that neighborhood, and they'll send you a letter in the mail, and they'll say, hey, you're gonna be assessed this amount. They'll usually disclose that, and they'll say over a 10-year period of time, 15-year period of time, this is how much your taxes will go up, and we'll put it in your winter taxes, usually is where they have it. Maybe sometimes summer, but usually it's in their winter taxes. So then you'll notice a huge increase in your taxes. Now, sometimes the balance for these can be $5,000, $6,000. If you have a 10-year assessment on something like that, where it's gonna be paid off in 10 years through your taxes, that's gonna be around $500 to $600 more a year on your taxes. So that is something that I notice about Holt, is that not only do they have the 50 mills, but a lot of times they do have a drain assessment on top of the mills. And so that is something just to be aware of, that if you see the taxes seem extremely high, compared to, like, you doing the math and being like, this seems just really high. I mean, it could be one of two reasons. It could be that there's an assessment, or it could be that the people who are owning the property are not using it as their primary residence, and they're not taking the property residence exemption, which means their taxes are 30% higher there. So it's one of those two reasons. But assessments are a common thing in the Holt area, and it's something for you that you need to be aware of when it comes to the taxes, because it will be then paid through your taxes. Okay, so con number one, the taxes are higher in Holt. Con number two is in just Holt, Michigan area, it's the lack of restaurants and entertainment in the area. The lack of restaurants and entertainment in the area. Now, I didn't say this earlier, but Holt has a roughly, well, no, I think you heard the population. It's over 25,000 people. That's about the size of Okemos, Michigan, okay? That area has a mall. It has other restaurants over there. And Holt, just in and of itself, they might have some fast food places. They have Edru Skate Center, which is another place that I highlighted on my vlog tour of Holt. They have an awesome skating center. But just in Holt, in and of itself, there's not a lot of options. So for you to find the shopping, the entertainment, the restaurants, you have to drive to the south side of Lansing. There's a street called Cedar Street that's a main drag, and takes you from Holt all the way to the southern part of Lansing, so the southern tip. And there you have Kroger, Meijer, you have Celebration Cinema, which is a huge multiplex. It's actually my favorite movie cineplex out of all the cineplexes throughout Lansing, Michigan, because they have the nice recliner seats. I just like being able to have that experience. So they have Celebration Cinemas. They do have some restaurants like Texas Roadhouse. They have Panera. They have Fazoli's. It's the only Fazoli's in the area. I love Fazoli's. So south part of Lansing does have some pros to it, but if you're going to find anything in Holt area, you're gonna have to travel about 5 to 10 minutes to the south part of Lansing to be able to eat at some of the restaurants and do some of the entertainment there. All right, number three, a con for Holt is its lack of diversity. Okay, lack of diversity. I do bring up diversity a lot in the pros and cons, because I think you just kind of need to be aware, like what's the racial makeup in the area. So in the last census, the diversity for Holt, this is you having a Holt mailing address, okay? Just keep that in mind. It was 93% white, which is a tick higher than, like, if you went to East Lansing or Okemos, it's around 75%, okay? So Holt proper, I'll call it Holt proper, the diversity is not as great there, okay? But pay attention to my last con, because I will address diversity again. Con number 4 of Holt, Michigan area is that there is no downtown. So it is a little similar to Okemos, Michigan. I think I featured in the pros and cons for Okemos that there is no downtown in Okemos, which kind of surprises me. There's no downtown really in Holt, not a formal downtown. Some people might say, oh yeah, there's some shops at the corner of Cedar Street and Holt Road. That's not a downtown. That's not a walkable place that you can just park your car and walk for a few blocks. So Holt does not have a downtown. There's really not a lot of local shops in Holt. So, I mean, I just find that a little bit as a con, because I like to be able to have that downtown feel to where you could go on a nightly stroll or be able to have some of those local places. So con number 4, no downtown. All right, con number 5 is that the school rating is lower than several suburbs. School rating is lower than several suburbs. So I'm basing that on niche.com, which is spelled NICHE.com. It's a website that rates all the school systems within the greater Lansing area. So Holt's rating was a B- on niche.com. Now to compare it to some others, Okemos had an A+, Hazlitt had an A, East Lansing had an A, DeWitt had an A-, but Holt has a B-. And when we break it down with, what are some of the reasons why it's a B-? Okay, so like we'll break it down a little bit further. So academics, they got a B- rating. For teachers, they had a B- rating. For college prep, that was a B+. For clubs and activities, that was a C+. But the one thing I do want to point out, and this is what I referred to in the beginning of the video, right? There's one thing about the Holt schools that is quite unusual, is that diversity was rated an A. Diversity was rated an A. Well, Troy, you just said that diversity was a con in Holt. So why, like you're saying 93% white, but yet this site gives an A for diversity in the schools. So how can that be? Do you know what you're talking about? Are you looking at the wrong websites? No, there is a reason for it. So please pay attention. So the reason why the diversity is an A is because of school of choice. And if you look at my top 5 school systems video, I explained to you what school of choice is. So I'm not gonna really get into the nitty gritty of what school of choice is, but basically the short and sweet of it is that you have a choice to be able to go to whatever school you want. So there are a lot of kids that do choose in the Lansing proper area to go to Holt schools. Because if you can kind of put 2 and 2 together, I told you that the lack of restaurants and entertainment in the Holt area, I said there's not a lot in Holt, but there's a lot in the south part of Lansing. So if you can kind of put 2 and 2 together here, the people who live in South Lansing with all that entertainment stuff, where there's a lot of population over there as well, they are choosing to go to Holt schools. And they're choosing to go to Holt schools because there are a lot of openings to be able to get in there. It's a fairly large school system, 5,000 people. So your diversity in the schools is going to change, which can be a good thing. Like if you take your kids to Holt schools and you're looking for diversity, there can be more diversity in the schools than what you would think than moving to the city of Holt and living there, okay? So I did want to point that out, because with school of choice, that kind of has made it that there's just a lot more diversity in the Holt schools. So that wraps up my pros and cons here for Holt, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Again, if you liked what you saw, I invite you to like, subscribe, or ring the bell for any notifications so that you can be notified when I have a new video coming up. And also, feel free to reach out to me anytime, call, text, email, or click on the link for a Zoom call. I would love to be able to even speak with you face to face and just kind of find out what some of your real estate goals are. So until next time, everybody, I hope you make it a great day. Take care.